Hi, this is Baruch Meir Ben Yonah Halevi. Welcome to my backyard, and it's during the 3 weeks between the 17th Tammuz and Tisha B'Av. So we're doing some a cappella series, and so instead of a poem or a song with some background music, I decided to just do some more like simple bite-sized classes. So this one will kind of go under the playlist, under the category of advice, a little bit of prayer protocols, and a little bit of Kabbalah kindergarten. So I'll explain. So this is just really going to go through a Kabbalistic prayer protocol that I use. I'm not a Kabbalist and I'm not a prayer expert, but I'm just going to share something that I do that I find is helpful, and you can take it for what it's worth. And it's basically it's kind of for a Jewish context, but it could be for non-Jewish for people either way. I think it works either way. But I'm going to connect it a little bit to the beginning of the Shemona Esrei, which is the formal Amida, the Jewish prayer that we do 3 times a day. But you can certainly use this in any other context. So it's a little background, I guess. How would we start? I guess we start with the idea that God created the world, and then He made us in His image, B'Tselem Elokim, and that God, since He's ethereal and we can't really understand what God is, but He did give us a way to grasp onto Him. And one is through the Kabbalists tell us the concept of the Spheros, which are kind of like spiritual, metaphysical channels that He uses to communicate and influence the world. And they're connected in a certain sense to the human body, since we're in His image. That's in the way that we're in His image, even though He doesn't have an image and He's not the Spheros, but on some level He helps us communicates to us through the Spheros. So the prayer protocol is a preparation for prayer that I use based on the Spheros. And so we'll just start from the top, because that's where the Spheros start, on the top. I also like to say that it goes just like the flow of energy from the spiritual to the physical world comes top down. It also in a certain sense comes inside out, so you could think of it that way also, but the top down is the one that makes the most sense. So we're going to use that, but just to keep that in mind, everything in a certain sense that goes top down I think also comes inside out. That we start from the Shama, start from the ethereal and come to the physical. So the first of the Spheros is called Keser in Hebrew, which means the crown, and the Kabbalists tell us there's really 3 steps to the crown. It's even more complicated than that, but that's the basics that I understand. And the 3 levels are: the top of the crown is faith, emunah; the middle of the crown is tainuk, which is pleasure; and the bottom of the crown, which is closest to your head, which is will, which is ratzon. And the way I like to think of it is like this: that the first step, the first thing you have is your choice, and it's your choice whether to have emunah or not. I mean, to believe that there's a God in the world, He created the world and all these things. At the end of the day, with all the proofs and all the logic we can use to explain it, at the end of the day, there is a level of emunah, of faith, that has to be there. And so that's the first step. And in a certain sense, we live today, people think we're living the digital world, we're living in a simulation. In a certain sense, there is a binary choice, and you have to make either you're with God or you're not. And that's really the step 1 on the ladder. So that's emunah, that's the top of the crown. When you make that choice, I believe the next level down, as energy flows from the highest levels, goes to tainuk, which is pleasure, because the greatest pleasure is be connected to that emunah. If you ever met a religious person who has true emunah, you know that no matter what's happening, it's all good, and that's the pleasure. And then the bottom of the crown, which is close to the head, which is called will, which is ratzon. And really, we're all in a certain sense wired for pleasure, physically and in other ways, and therefore our wills, in a certain sense, we want to really go back up. So our will is really, we want to have pleasure, and that pleasure will take us to emunah, and that's how things flow back up. And that will also represents God. This is God. It also represents the connection between the higher worlds and the bottom worlds. Hashem has a will. He wants that energy and concepts to flow into our world, and He wants us to do stuff. So that's the connection from the bottom of the crown to the head. The top of the head, or the top of the person, where you start getting into the body, which would be the Chachma and Bina, which would be like the right brain and the left brain. That flow of energy is going from emunah, which is faith, into pleasure, into will, goes into Chachma and Bina, which is the right brain and the left brain. Or in a certain sense, it goes first to Chachma, is just like wisdom that flows into your head when you have a good idea. An Einfall, it's called in Yiddish, and you just know something, but you can't really structure it. Bina means to build. So you have an idea, you have a concept, you have a spiritual thought or feeling, and it has to be crystallized into something, has to be built into a diagram, into a word, into a formula. That's Chachma and Bina. And so all that I'm thinking, when I get to Chachma and Bina, that's the beginning of the Shemona Esrei, which is Baruch, which is the first word of the bracha. And you're supposed to bend your knees at Baruch for a few reasons. That's my name, actually. But Baruch comes from the same root as Beish, Reish, and Chaf, which means, could mean knees. That's why we bend our knees. But also means break, which is a pool. And a pool is like, there's a pool is like a source of blessing, because water is the greatest source of blessing in the physical world. And the bracha also means to expand. So there's an expansion of spiritual energy expanding down from this pool. So we bend our knees to be machnia ourselves, to humble ourselves to that blessing, and to accept that energy that's coming through Chachma and Bina, that we have to, as we slowly kind of taking hold of it, making it our own, first through Chachma by accepting it, then by Bina by building it. That's step one. And then the second part is Shemona Esrei, where you actually bow down flat, and that's Atah. So the word Atah that we say means you, because you're speaking to God. Atah is you, but Atah, that's with an aleph. With an ayin, Atah is now. So in a certain sense, we're saying the time that I am most present is now. The time I'm most with God is now, because that's the only time I have choices. So that's now is flat, and that connects to the next level of the spheres, which is Das. So Das is the connection from the higher world to the lower world. It's like the neck. It's like the language. And it says like Adam knew Chava, his wife, and biblical knowing means it's connection and chibur. So the goal there is to connect that all those thoughts in the higher world down through into my body, to my emotions, into my physical body. So then that's Atah, so you go flat. And then when you say Hashem's name, Yud Kei Vav Kei, you stand up straight, so there's Kef Kufuvim, because Hashem wants you not to be bowing down, not to be humble. He wants you to do stuff, and you stand up straight. And then you're standing up straight, that is the Yud Kei Vav Kei. The Yud is the head, the Hey is the arms, the Vav is the torso, and the Hey is the bottom. And it also represents the bottom spheros, Chesed, Gevura, Tiferes, Netzach, Hod, Yesod, and Malchus, and those are the bottom spheros. And that's like how we do everything, is with our arms and our legs and our body, etc. And the Tzelem Elokim is the picture, the image of God. The image of God is really the picture of Hashem's name, the Tetragrammaton, straight up. And that's when I start the Shemona Esrei. After I do all that meditation, I say Baruch Atah Hashem. It takes a while, but then I feel really grounded, and I know where I'm going, I know where I'm coming from. And then you can even start to visualize, well, what is Chesed and what is Gevura. That's the whole another next step. Maybe we can make that the next step for the next video. But that is my prayer protocol for Kabbalah Kindergarten. It's my advice. I think you should try it. If it makes some sense, you should do some research, try to see if what I'm saying is reasonable. But that's what I have to say today. Have a wonderful day.